I've got a fun interview with Charlie Pallilo, Houston sports radio legend. And the name of his podcast, which I botch multiple times in this interview, is actually Texans on Tap. Texans on Tap. Old Sethers can't get the details right. We know that. Charlie Pallilo always does. Here's my interview with Charlie Pallilo. It's the Bleav in Texans podcast brought to you by FanDuel, where right now the Texans over-under on wins this season is 9.5. I'll get into that with our guest here in a little bit. And a lot of you don't need an introduction for Charlie Pallilo. Been a legend in sports radio in Houston, really a pioneer of sports radio in general, starting in 1989. He was on the air on 610 when I first got to Houston with the Texans back in 2002. And now he's currently doing whatever the hell he wants, including the Tapped on Texans podcast and the Stone Cold Strohs podcast. Charlie, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for the invite. And as I assiduously prepared for a conversation with the Ivy Leaguer in the room, best I could come up with was our last formal media interaction would have been 20 years ago. And I know going into it, you didn't think it would be your final playing season, but attached to that, probably few people realize 20 years ago, the final season of your career, meaning you began your NFL career at age 13.
Yes, exactly. I keep trying to figure out if I can get on. I can't learn how to edit Wikipedia. I've tried to add a few Super Bowl victories into there too, and they won't. I've gone back and I've watched a few of your episodes of Tapped on Texans to kind of check in on where you've been since the abomination in New England. But then also I'm excited to talk to you because I feel like you're probably a good check for some of my blind spots and sometimes where I have to take off the battle red hued goggles. You've always been like
vice versa.
Yeah. So you're people trust your opinion on this. I guess we'll start with that. I know immediately after the schedule was released, I think you projected 12 or 13 wins for the Texans. So with an over-under of 9.5 right now, and I'm guessing you feel like the over is still a pretty safe bet.
I think it's one of the easier calls in the league. As always, like in those brokerage ads, the fine print or fast speak at the end, past performance is no guarantee of future results. But while the Texans 10-7 was good enough to win a lackluster division, and then 12 was not enough to win it with what Jacksonville did last year, it was 12 wins. And they're not playing first place schedule this season, which doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. But I think their floor is very high. The Texans, with the occasional exception, over 17 games, you can just have a total clunker. But this is a team with its defense that is very, very difficult to blow out. So on the downside, you're in a bunch of close games, and year to year, you can lose them. Just look at the Texans last season. Early, they couldn't win a close game, or 2 years ago, they couldn't win a close game. And then when they rip off 9 straight wins, last season, they couldn't lose one. But with the best defense in football, or at the very minimum, you're sitting at the head table. And the ongoing questions with the offense, and I'm sure we'll get to at least 7 of those. Over 9.5, I'm quite comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that is, it always comes back to the offense because it is, as much as, it's been pounded in my brain by Dom Capers and Tom Coughlin and everybody else, never to just assume that you're going to continue on where you were. It's hard to envision, other than injuries, a reason for that Texans defense to take a big drop off. So all the conversation really comes back to CJ Stroud. And right now in the dead time, that's the question on the national shows is, all right, who are the quarterbacks that might get extended? The only 2 realistic ones that could happen this year are Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Do you anticipate CJ Stroud getting any kind of an extension before the season? And I guess for the next round of quarterbacks that do get new contracts, whether it's CJ Stroud or whether it's not until next year with the 5 or 6 guys that are eligible, do you think they're going to burst through that $55 million per year cap that there's kind of an invisible ceiling on the quarterback salaries right now?
Yeah, a lot of branches on this tree, Seth, that we can wander out on. And there's the, like when we were kids, if you did something stupid because a friend did or encouraged you to do, and your mom, if someone told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do that? All these $55 million quarterback salaries, annual salaries, just because the others do it. But the Texans are going to have their feet held to the fire by, of course, Stroud and his representation with these TV deals. crazy. The cap's going to escalate $10 million per year. And by the end of a Stroud extension, if the NFL opts out of the deals 2030, there could be another spike in the TV money. But when you look at these contracts, stupid is as stupid does. Trevor Lawrence, 5 years, $275 million. Is he a top 10 quarterback? Brock Purdy, I know Mr. Irrelevant and great things and whiz-bang start with the 49ers, but $55 million per year, and with the injury factor thrown into that. Jordan Love is good, but $55 million per year, good? It's as if all these teams have said, all right, we accept that 20% of our cap space is going to go to the quarterback position. I mean, Dak Prescott at $60 million per season, how many playoff wins? Not that it's all on Dak, but do you have to follow the leader? But if you're CJ Stroud, or I guess more aptly his representation, are you going to buy the argument? Well, Tom Brady always left money on the table with the Patriots, and look at the teams that they were able to build around him over a long period of time. But CJ is not in the first tier of quarterbacks, so should he make Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes money? No, but when his extension kicks in, presuming they do one at some point, what will the cap be? What will the cap be? So in terms of real day dollars, $55 million per in 2027 forward, that would be like $45 million per just 2 or 3 seasons ago. And then just one other branch, and then I'll stifle myself. What's the alternative? And Bill of Rights, Article 1 for fan is overreact, right? It's either the greatest ever or the worst ever. And CJ was cataclysmically bad. There's no getting around that. But there are greater quarterbacks than him who've had absolute playoff debacle performances. Peyton Manning once lost a playoff game 41-0. The Indianapolis Colts lost the playoff game 41-0, but Peyton stunk in that game. Tom Brady got blown out at home in the playoffs, a 3-interception loss at home to the Baltimore Ravens. Brett Favre, and I know he is turnover prone, he threw 6 of them in a playoff loss one year. CJ Stroud is still a young guy. We can go all the way back to one offseason ago when Sam Darnold melted down late in 2024. The Vikings move off him. He had a playoff nightmare. And a year later, looky there. So that CJ Stroud is going to be just this mental tapioca pudding now, and that he's emotionally crushed for life. I'm not buying that at all. Do I think it's an inevitable rocket ship to the top for CJ Stroud? And will he be a top 5 quarterback? I'm not saying I'd buy that aggressively. But what is the alternative? Maybe Baker Mayfield hits the market if he doesn't work it out with the Buccaneers. If you're a Texans fan, you're thinking, yeah, let's trade way up from CJ Stroud to Baker Mayfield.
Well, no, and especially, too, even if you think about it, well, yeah, but the quarterback class is going to be so strong next year. That's great. It's still a crapshoot, and you're too good a team. Like, they've already proven that without a great offense or even a good offense that they can make the playoffs, and they're probably not going to have a high draft pick. I guess there's kind of a double-edged sword that I've been thinking about with the Texans and the way they operate is that, one, Caserio is very aggressive in giving basically, high bar setting contracts to guys who have achieved, whether it's Will Anderson or Derek Stingley or Jalen Petrie or whomever. And I get a little bit nervous about that sometimes, just about what it means for the future and how they're going to be able to sustain. But with CJ, I think it's a lot easier to tell a quarterback, hey, this isn't a year, but there's a carrot on a stick here, and this organization has a history of delivering the carrot. They don't have the reputation of places like the Bengals or wherever else where guys get left out in the cold and unrewarded. And that it might be easier for Mulligetta and CJ to say, look, we realistically understand that the performance hasn't been what we think we're capable of, but that also we know that if we do deliver this year without making a big stink of the contract, which they haven't, because Mulligetta and CJ haven't made any kind of agitating types of moves, that there doesn't need to be drama about it. And that, look, if you go out and you perform, there's going to be a big contract there at the end of the road.
And that's a little bit of the price of poker from the Texans side. All in all, it'll be a tremendous problem to have to confront if they're AFC Championship game or beyond, and Team CJ saying, well, now it's $62.5 million per season. That's where we'll start the bidding on a 5-year deal. But just to mention a couple of other quarterbacks, Justin Herbert is in the well over 50 million per season club, still awaiting playoff win number one, because he's always personally fallen short in their playoff losses? No. Nevertheless, it's like a starting pitcher in baseball, run support and other defense impact. But people are going to look at the one-loss record. The oh my God scenario is if you double down and then some with CJ Stroud, and you're looking at a Tua Tagovailoa situation a season from now. You know, in the Texans thinking, apart from the playoffs, the multiple concussions in CJ Stroud's past, do they weigh that in if you're talking about having to guarantee $180, $200 million to a player?
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that's kind of what I'm going to be monitoring, I think, in the first couple of weeks of the regular season is, all right, we know, look, we saw CJ perform after the concussion. He was operating a little bit differently, but he was still functional and they were winning games. It's just that if you tie the concussion to what he did in the playoffs and whether it was psychological at all or not, I don't think it's going to be an issue because he's already come back from a concussion previously in his career. But that, like, week one, that's one of the things that's first on my list, just to check it off the box and get out of the way, is like, okay, he's functioning. The other thing in week one, where on FanDuel, the Texans are currently 1.5-point underdogs to the Bills, that I'm curious about what you feel right now based on, I know that you've turned into an exercise physiologist just like the rest of us and have watched Tank Dell workout videos on Instagram and watched him in a jog through at practice. If you had to guess, is Tank Dell on the active roster, on the PUP, or something somewhere else on September 13th?
I guess given those options, I'll throw a dart at PUP.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Tank Dell at this point, like you're walking down the street, and if you see $100 bill, fantastic.
Just found money.
Planning my afternoon around finding one. And you hope, just for the sake of his career and earning power, apart from the excitement level and specific dynamic component that he would add to the Texans offense. But I have to say, at this point, I would think he's just another injury waiting to happen, because he is so slight of build. And if he loses, a little bit, Tyreek Hill, the decline, kind of steep, personal matters aside. But when it's a very special trait tier of speed and or quickness, if you lose just a little bit of that, I think it's more costly, when you're 5'8", 155 pounds or whatever the actual physical dimensions are for Tank Dell. The balance to that is, I think this should be a natural year of leap for both Higgins and Noel. And with Nico, that's a pretty strong 1, 2, 3. But of course, you'd love to have one more special card in your deck.
You're talking about the offense in general. At the very end of this, the episode you guys did after the Patriots collapse, and I think you basically, somebody brought up some of the statistics about the offense, and I'm guilty of this myself at times. But look on the sum total of it, they were 13th in scoring, and you said, look, they were a great field goal offense. They were really good. They were good at taking advantage of turnovers, but then stalling out in the red zone. And that's where I'm wondering with their offseason strategy. I've been a fan of just zeroing in on the run game. I mean, every single guy they added to the offense, in the core of the offense, has been somebody who's either scouted and projected to be a good run blocker, or he's already a good run blocker, or it's David Montgomery, who's good in the short yardage. If you look at the red zone offense, which was the glaringly bad thing, I'm trying to figure out just like how much of a hurdle that is to where they could actually really transform themselves as an offense and be a potent offense if they just get that minor detail of scoring touchdowns, but being able to run down in the red zone and just to convert some fourth downs, to convert on the goal line, that they end up being a really good offense sooner than it looks like they could be, whether or not CJ ends up being an awesome quarterback.
And with that, hey, when you're scraping bottom of the barrel, I don't think the standard needs to be, it would be delightful, but this is suddenly a top 5 red zone offense, and you're surprised if they don't score 6 rather than have Fairbairn kick 3 when you're down there. But if you can get to just solidly middle of the pack, because they're going to have some big play potential, they're going to have a defense that gets them field position and occasional points on the board, just don't be a total stink bomb. down there. And I like the Montgomery edition. I know he's closer to 30 than 25, that old movie Logan's Run, where you turn 30 and it's over for you. But Montgomery's coming off the fewest carries in a season in his career. I like that. I mean, it's not as if he fell off the map. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most sensational, scintillating, electric players in the league. So the Lions gravitated more that way in their offense. But Montgomery, the last 3 seasons, I think it's 4.6, 4.2, 4.5 yards per carry. 4.5 was last year. So there was no drop off. He can catch the ball a little bit. If he is comparable in production to where Joe Mixon was for the Texans in 2024, Woody Marks as the complementary back, that should be his role, not a primary. And you mentioned Gio, 5'11", 230. Some thump there in the pile, short yardage, goal to go. And, of course, the other connector on that is the offensive line going to be better. And, again, not that I expect or demand they be this road-grading, wrecking ball machine of an O-line, but just don't feel like if you hand off on 1st and 10, it's 50-50 that you're going to be 2nd and 11.
I feel like so you having been you've been in Houston from the Oilers on and through the Texans, and I feel like at any given time in the NFL, I'd say 26 fan bases are really upset about the state of their offensive line. Does that sound about right? Does that match up with like it feel? Because going back to obviously in the expansion year, we had some offensive line issues, but just now that I've been in this business for 15 years or so, I realized like, oh man, yep. Even when the Texans offensive line was pretty good, like just it's still it never feels like you have a great offensive line, and I think that's where I start to feel during the offseason as we're talking about, and I'm getting excited about all the additions and everything. I almost have this invisible, like this hand grabbing me and be like, shut up. What do you think? You think you're going to have a good offensive line this year? You'll never have a good offensive line. Like, and I just don't know. I feel like, am I delusional to be optimistic about the additions they've made?
No. And again, I know it's not what a fan wants to hear. There's nothing wrong with high standards and objectives, but if you're always measuring yourself against the best, how inferior are we versus the best, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you go from worse to bad, that's improvement. I mean, you don't run around celebrating, hey, we're not as bad as we used to be, but if you make at least incremental improvement, again, when the foundation of this football team is a super elite, maybe one of one defense, they don't need to be the greatest show on turf or a Peyton Manning peak era Colts type offense. You want to certainly be legitimately plus side of the middle. League, we only play 17 games as opposed to 82 in the NBA, 162 in baseball. Statistics, rate stats can get thrown out of whack by putting 44 points up against a helpless Baltimore team with everyone injured early in the season, 40 plus against just a mess of an Arizona team late in the season. It's kind of like most lines of work. If you're at your best, I expect you to be damn good. Mm-hmm. If you're at your worst, all right, we all have bad days, but do you at least hold it together and can you be credible? But what matters most is how are you at your average, or within range of your average, because that's where you're probably going to be more often than not. And if the Texans' average performance offensively is good, not great, I think this is a legit Super Bowl contender in the AFC.
Legit Super Bowl contender. If you look at the rest of the AFC South, I was trying to figure out whether I should ask this in the negative way or the positive way. Yeah, let's do the negative way. Which of these 3 teams, I'll include the Titans, which of the 3 other teams in the AFC South have the most potential for collapse? So for the Titans, it would be they remain bad despite churning over like half their roster and having a new coach and everything. But and then the Colts and the Jaguars, whatever your expectations are for them, which one feels the most precarious?
I guess using the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I would go Jacksonville. The Jaguars haven't strung together really good seasons in quite a while now, and from 13-4. They could still be pretty good, but with a first place schedule and things just don't go as well. I know the Texans have had pretty good success historically in Jacksonville, but I like the fact that the Texans get a divisional road game in London rather than having to go to Jacksonville. So if you tell me the Jags are going 9-8 this season, I'm not saying, oh, no way. That's a 4-loss drop, a pretty significant drop from division champ to probably not making the playoffs if you go 9-8. And they had notable losses each side of the ball in the offseason, certainly more so than the Texans had. Daniel Jones, I don't know if he rented his soul to the devil for the first half of the last season with the Colts, and then the devil collected with the injury. But that was so far out of character relative to the rest of his career. And I know his tenure with the Mets, with the Giants, they were entirely a mess. But Daniel Jones at $47 million for people fretting what CJ Stroud might get. I know the Colts solid defense, and if Jonathan Taylor is healthy in another contract year and decides to show up at the beginning of it. But I just don't see their upside being very high. But from 9-8 type range, I don't think they're going to go 3-14. And the Titans, unless Cam Ward uncorks one of the great second seasons we've ever seen, they just still don't have a viable roster to compete.
Yeah, and I think, the only one that's really in position to topple, like you pointed out, I guess, is the Jaguars. There's a part about the Jaguars' methodology this offseason, which I get it. It makes sense. Okay, cool. You're playing the long game where you're letting your free agents walk and you're going to get compensatory picks a couple years down the road. But this is a team that couldn't – they had that great surge offensively, and Trevor Lawrence just became a much better passer in the second half of the season. But they also couldn't run the ball. And you just let Travis Etienne walk, and you let Devin Lloyd walk on defense. Going back to what I said earlier, it's just been drilled into me as a player. Like, you never just step back in and you're just as good as you were. And they just operated in the front office like, oh, okay, we're just going to cruise along to this, and then Liam Cohen's brilliance with Trevor Lawrence is going to make all the difference. And I'm not sold on that just yet.
I agree. Trevor Lawrence looks the part, and I know he was the anointed one from when he first stepped on the field at Clemson. I just don't look at him and say elite or knocking on the door of elite in terms of arm strength or consistency of decision making. I just never see a game where I think, man, Trevor Lawrence was spectacular. Yeah. Now, sure, the possibility exists, which would be bad news for the Texans. You hit it, right? If Liam Cohen is quarterback whisperer, and the tumblers clicked in the second half of the season, and Brian Thomas has a huge bounce back year. And, Mr. Two-Way at least gives them one way after pretty much of a nothing of a rookie season, which meant no first-round pick, joining the Jaguars in 2026. But they very much are a prove-it-to-me team in consecutive seasons.
Something that we weren't talking about it at all until the World Cup came around, and all of a sudden all these Europeans and people from outside the country are just gushing about NRG/Reliance Stadium, how awesome it was and everything. And we were reminded, they're trying to refurbish that or build a new stadium. Which at this point, do you think it ends up being a new stadium altogether or just a renovation of some sort?
I don't know. Since it's only 10, 11, 12 games in a season at home, I don't think it's disastrous if they wind up going to Compound Northwest with the whole practice facility thing.
Yeah.
But it's still a perfectly fine stadium. It's not like it needs to be replaced because, it's a generation behind. It just doesn't have luxury suites. But if you're ownership and if you're the NFL at large and franchise values, and we do it because we can, we want a new one because we're able to force our way into one. But who are they going to use as a stalking horse? The London Texans, the Portland Texans this time around. Ultimately, I guess I don't care unless you have to be kidding me that, what do you mean it's not going to get done? But $400 million it's not a dump, right? It's the dump next door that eventually do something with, even if it's just create more parking for the Texans to charge exorbitant rates for and the rodeo. But I still think it's a good stadium. And it's interesting. I wonder what behind the closed doors the Texans are saying about, hey, world, tamp down the idea that this stadium is as good as it gets and the acoustics and everything else about it.
Yeah, they should have sabotaged something. If I'm in the Texans front office, and this is why they'll never hire me in the front office, I'm saying,
how about a natural grass surface?
We gotta. Hey, look, NFL players let me down this last couple of weeks because you kept seeing, George Kittle and everybody said, hey, they did it for the World Cup. How come we can't have natural grass surface? Because the non-goalies average 165 pounds. It's a whole different scenario. I weighed 300 pounds trying to take on a combo block from two other 300 pounders on a pallet system, and my leg gave way and I tore all the tendons off my hamstring tendons off my pelvis. It's a whole different scenario than soccer when you're talking about temporary grass surfaces.
Let me ask you, for the NFL, if a perfectly manicured and maintained grass field is the perfect 10, the optimal playing surface, what do you think of the current generations of field turf?
Oh, boy.
Perfect grass is a 10. We're talking it's evolved to a 7 as opposed to the days of concrete type turf where it's still 4 or 5. If a cow can't chew it, we really shouldn't be playing on it unless there's no viable alternative.
For me, it was always practicing on field turf or AstroTurf or anything that I didn't like day in and day out. It just did feel like it started to take a toll on your joints. For the field, so a pristine grass field, that's obviously a 10, and that's a lot of fun. That's kind of cool. You kind of marvel at it sometimes when you're out there stretching. But I would say still the best field turf for me, I like a 7 or an 8, just because you have solid footing all the time. And I guess maybe I was a little too reckless and not worried about whether or not I got injured or anything. Plus, I wasn't fast enough to get that injured based on turf conditions. I would still rather play on good field turf than, some of these grass fields that you see at the end of the season in the NFL. Half of that's paint. It's just bare dirt and ryegrass and everything, and they paint it green to make it look better. So I know there's a part of me that's like, just shut up and go out and play. I've completely flipped on a lot of player stuff. I don't act like a former player at all. I act more like either a grumpy old coach or a fan, where I'm like, I don't want to hear about the complaining. Just go out and play football.
Unless you're really going to draw the line in the sand, kind of like the 17th game. We'll never play a 17-game schedule. We'll never play a 17 game. We'll never play. How much more money?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the other.
We'll see about the 18-game schedule the next time talks come around.
That's the other thing. Yeah, like where I'm a grumpy old man now and not like a former player. Whenever I do hear the players complaining about the monies are just going, the owners are just looking for more money. I'm like, yeah, and we get 50% of that. It's more money for us. Let's not pretend that. But I don't want to keep you any longer, Charlie. You got to go have to do whatever. What do? You do whatever the hell you want these days. So what do you do in a given day?
Oh boy, Golden Doodle occupies way too much of my time. I'm a softball guy at this point. Hung up the tennis racket basically a few years ago. I'm not a fitness buff, but when my work days overlap play as much as I could ever have reasonably asked, it's not like my interest in sports dropped off dramatically once I stopped doing the everyday thing. So maybe I still don't follow everything with the same level of depth that I would if I was doing 4 hours per day. But I'm never not going to be interested.
Yeah, no, and everything. The Astros are making it interesting right now. So, Tapped on Texans and Stone Cold Stros with Charlie Pallilo. Highly encourage if you're just only minimally on YouTube or on podcasts and you're wondering I miss Charlie Pallilo. Go find him because he's just the same Charlie Pallilo he's always been. Really appreciate it, Charlie. And anybody watching, please subscribe. Certainly go over to Tapped on Texans, or I keep wanting to say Stoned on Stros. Stone Cold Stros. They put the kibosh on Stoned on Stros. Thanks a lot, Charlie.
Thank you, Seth.